Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Sarra Show. Today I have Dr. Sanaa Mrabet with me. Sanaa, hello.
Hi, Sarah. So happy to be here.
Or should I call you doctor? I've known you for so long.
I know. You can call me Sanaa.
I'll call you Sanaa. I'll call you doctor as well. You are a doctor. I mean,
Thank you.
you went to school forever.
Yes, a lot of years.
Yeah. I want to start with that, actually. What made you decide to study psychology?
It's a good question. It didn't come to me natural. I mean, it's not it didn't come to me natural, but it took time for me to realize that this is what I want to study. Naturally, I'm somebody that likes to work with people in an intimate way, meaning I like to listen to people. I like to learn about people. I'm always curious to know their lives, their situations. Like I was that kid who knew what's going on around the neighborhood, what's going on in people's homes. So it took me a while to realize that this is what I want to do. This is what would actually give me that reward of still being interested in people's behaviors and patterns, and at the same time doing something that is of service to others.
That's beautiful. You and I both were born and raised in Morocco, a beautiful country.
Absolutely.
We've been in Miami for I can't speak today, for over 20 years now. Not that you guys need to guess our ages. Thank you.
Let's not go there.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were kids when we met.
For sure.
Yes.
For sure. Growing up in Morocco, and you just mentioned, you were that kid who was always curious to know how people are living, what they're thinking, what's going on within them. Is that something that is still fully alive within you?
Yes, you can ask my sister and she will tell you definitely. I'm always curious about people. I'm an observant person. I'm not very talkative. I like to sit and just observe and just register in my head and just like make my own, ideas in my head about people and their lives. And so it's definitely still alive.
What's the craziest thing you've observed or analyzed or seen?
I don't know. At this point, I think in my career and in my life, I don't think I see things as crazy anymore. I think there's always, for me, I'm always thinking what is behind that behavior, right? I'm thinking, well, maybe there is trauma there. Maybe there is, this thing going on there. Maybe that person is needing something. But it's not for me anymore about the behavior. So even the craziest of things, and I'm specifically thinking about somebody, for example, who commits like heinous crime or something. Like I'm never looking at the act, but I'm mostly like looking at like, wow, what was it like for that person, like to get here?
So separating the behavior from the I am, right? Like someone did, but it doesn't define who they are, right? As a soul. How do you, outside of your professional life, in your personal life, how do you put boundaries around that? So I totally get it. I'm that way too. Like you behave that way, but I know.
I don't know. I always thought that we're very similar.
Yeah.
And really, to the point that sometimes I think we're both are born during the same time, but then I remind myself that we're not,
Yeah.
I always felt that. And that's why I think we, even though we like there comes, I don't know how many years we don't see each other, we don't connect, but when we connect and we're just like, we just met yesterday, like we were together just yesterday.
Yeah,
you know. So I think there is that similarities.
Definitely. We see a lot of things the same way.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's that deep understanding of humanity, and also that place of stillness is what I call it, where you just, where you're just still and you can observe and feel into the energy. Yeah, it's very subtle. Except I didn't go to school for 15 years.
Interestingly enough, we both now we find ourselves like in the same path. Like you are in, you know, coaching service, and I am also in the counseling, you know. So we found ourselves like exactly doing the same thing.
Yeah. It's all working in the same, what would I call it? I don't know if it's dimension or sphere, or I don't know what the word is, but in that same space. Mm-hmm. So, you know, separating behavior from I am, right?
Yeah.
I've found myself, I had to learn that I still got to put boundaries. Your trauma explains your behavior, but it doesn't justify it.
For sure, yeah.
What is your process for putting those sorts of boundaries around you, especially in your personal life?
I think it's a work in progress. I can't tell you that I have arrived to this place where I am able to put boundaries so firmly and so automatically. I don't think that's the case. I think it depends on what's going on in my life. I think it's a dance. Who are the people that I'm trying to put boundaries with? Generally speaking, I'm somebody who has a very tight circle of people. I'm not somebody that usually has so many friends, and I like more intimate gatherings. I have friends like you from many, many years. But with those people, I think it's a balance act. It's, you know, sometimes I'm good at it, sometimes I struggle with it, sometimes I have to really sit down with myself and be like, okay, I think there is something we need to do here. And our culture, I feel, makes it a little bit more complex for us to put boundaries.
Mm.
It doesn't come natural. I think we're very enmeshed culture. We get into each other's business. And there is some goodness in that, you know, and finding that balance where you can put boundaries and yet be still close to that person and not hurt their feelings. And them not thinking that you're, you know, thinking anything other than you're just putting boundaries. So I think it takes practice. And I can tell you that I learned about boundaries in my 20s. And it was another thing that comes with boundaries is assertiveness, right? And again, assertiveness is not something that's encouraged in our culture. I think recently, maybe with the new generation, there is more of like, you know, talking about assertiveness and things like that. But growing up, you know, children, you're not supposed to talk back to adults, or you're not supposed to assert yourself. You're supposed to be polite and, you know, well-mannered. And so there was always this challenge for me to be assertive, but not aggressive. Does that make sense? Like, and so it was a challenge to get there, to assert yourself, but calmly.
Right? It's an art.
It's an art.
Yeah, it really is an
art. And to assert yourself with confidence. You're not fighting somebody. You're just telling them, like, this is how I like things to be, and this is my life, and you're okay with it. And you're not necessarily attaching to that, like, how is that person going to respond to me? Or is this person going to be mad at me? So it takes work, I think.
It takes practice.
It takes practice.
For sure. Yeah, it did take me a lot of practice as well. Trying to say things from a place of it's for me, not against you. And I'm trying to say it in the most calm way possible.
I like that. Yeah.
You know?
I always saw you as assertive, though.
So yes, and that maybe it also caused me problems to a fault. You know, assertive to a fault. You know, sometimes I got the feedback of, especially when, you know, a long time ago when I was first beginning my career, you're too direct. You know, I didn't know how to finesse things.
Yes.
You know, so I'm like, why would I say it differently? It is what it is.
Yeah.
You know, then I had to get into the art of communication, and I can be a straight talker and direct while still finding a way to get the message across, you know, because I don't want to hurt your feelings either. So if my message doesn't get across, then I haven't done the job. So how can I be direct in a calm way?
Right.
You know, I feel like as humans, sometimes we work in extreme opposites, you know. So you have the person who's very direct, and then you have the person who's very passive. Right? You have the person who says everything, and then you have the person who doesn't say anything.
Yes.
You have the person who's seen as aggressive, and you have the person who's seen as passive aggressive.
Yeah.
So I think we work in these like extremes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
it was the case for me.
Yeah, right? Yeah. In one of the extreme.
Yeah.
For me too.
I'm either like too nice and I like take a lot, but then when I'm like, that's it, I can't take it anymore, I jump to this other side. Or like, So I'm learning to do better with that.
Yeah, to come into the middle point of it doesn't have to be this or that, right? It's not a black or white type of world.
Yeah.
How can I dance in between these two? And that's, for me, is an art.
Yes.
It takes a lot of practice and it takes a lot of mistakes.
For sure.
But it's also a beautiful thing to learn. Yeah. It was hard for me to learn because of the self-talk that I had. You know, if I do it one way or the other, then I'm harsh on myself.
Yeah. And for me, sometimes I perceived myself in certain situations that I was harsh, but I wasn't. And then, you know, and other times I perceived myself that I was just being direct, but other people take it as like, oh my God, you hurt my feelings. I can't believe you said that. So, but what I learned in the process and through my career and working with my clients, that feelings in general, I think when we come across strongly to people, it's probably because we were not able to sit a little bit with our feelings. It was like more of like a reaction, just an emotional reaction, and then we come too strongly. But when we're able to just pause, you can feel your feelings, you know, and just be like, okay, I know I really want to send that message, or I really want to make that phone call, but I'm just going to sit with it. Let me see how I'm going to feel tomorrow or the day after, or, you know. And I think that allows us to be able to come across as assertive and not in a way that hurts somebody's feelings.
That pausing is so hard for so many people.
Yes,
Right,
it's emotional regulation.
Yeah, because we want to react and we want to control, and we are in a world of immediate gratification. We want answers right away. We want the reward right away. We want the benefit right away.
Right.
And that taking a deep breath and pausing, it's almost kind of like you surrender it to a bigger power. Right, I'm not going to do anything right now. I'm going to surrender it and see what shows up out of it.
Yeah, and I think we, you know, a lot of us were not, we were not shown how to do that, right? Because this is something that you learn early on, and ideally, if you do, like when we were children, if we saw our parents and the people around us able to like just be like, you know, I know I'm angry, I know I'm not feeling good right now, or I'm feeling hurt, but I'm going to take my time to respond to that person. Or even when we were young and our emotions are so high and we're dysregulated, and our parents are able to be like, oh, I know you're feeling really angry right now. And they modeled for us, right, how to be regulated instead of yelling and shouting and like, maybe sometimes even for some people spanking, right? It's something that we learn.
It's, as you talk about as children, and I can only, we grew up in Morocco, right, where emotions are flying, right? Yes. It's a very, I call it warm blood Mediterranean, Berber, African kind, like it's everything is like, we're very emotional creatures, right? So like I was smiling because, as you say, in our parents modeling for us how to regulate, or even our teachers or anybody older than us, I'm like, that is not
that's
something.
not happening, right? Like, a teacher getting upset at a student for not doing something and yelling. Like, I remember having teachers like that, Actually, there was I remember this. We were in elementary school, and our teacher, who was incredible, she did this. She put a lot of effort in this, I think, end of the year event at the school, and we were supposed to dance. And she got so overwhelmed, and she started yelling and screaming and hitting everybody. And it's like I always remember it, And it's not like that we're expecting people to not be human. I think everybody loses it from time to time. But I think it's that act of acknowledging, and like, I'm sorry, I messed up. I'm sorry I yelled. I'm sorry I was very angry. It wasn't towards you. I was upset or something like that, right? And also teaching children that it's okay sometimes to be dysregulated. But it's also important to take accountability and bring yourself back, right?
It's interesting because in Morocco, I feel like we take it very lightly. When someone loses their shit, we don't even make it a thing. We take it very lightly, which is an extreme as well, right? Because when you make it also a big deal and you shame the person, that doesn't teach anybody anything either. And then like you say, and then you don't take accountability for it at all, or you normalize it. Oh yeah, he got violent and was aggressive and was yelling, whatever. That's just who he is or how he is or she, right? That's the other extreme, which I find pretty funny. Every time I go back, I notice that. I notice how people are so high on emotions. And it's all okay, and it's all good, and So taking accountability. You're talking about regulating the nervous system. Mm-hmm. There are different ways to regulate the nervous system. Yeah. You're a clinical psychologist. You work with parents. You work with children. You do testing for children. You do all kind of cool stuff. What is the best way to regulate the nervous system?
The number one thing, I think, it's education. I don't think people understand the importance of the nervous system. I don't think we understand how the mind and body connect. So I think it starts with that. Like, for my clients, that's the first thing I talk about. Like, for example, if somebody is anxious, like how is anxiety impacting this person? And how does the nervous system play a role in their anxiety and what they can do about it, right? Because there is this, like, I'm feeling anxious. What do I do? Do I take medication? Do I, talk therapy? But there is also something that you can do, first of all, to become aware of your own nervous system. Like, what triggers you? what calms you. And that's unique to every person, right? I can suggest things and give recommendations, but to help that person really monitor and be curious about their nervous system and how, how do they get to calm it. A lot of people, when I mention meditation, they're like, no, I can't meditate. I can't. But sometimes it doesn't have to be meditation. It can be praying. It can be just sitting in a calm place, listening to some nice, light music. But basically just understanding what calms you and also understanding what triggers the person. Another system that's often forgotten is the sensory system, that only until recently that I became aware of how my sensory system works and how does it impact my nervous system. Like when I am irritable, like what's irritating me in the environment, when I'm feeling fidgety, like what's going on. And I don't think we pay a lot of attention to that.
So that's very interesting. So when you mention sensory, so that's like smell, touch, right? Whatever you hear, whatever. So whatever is around.
Taste, all your senses, right? I'll give you an example. I used to always feel drained going to the mall. Like, tell me go to the mall and I'll be like, no, just don't feel like it. I feel like it sucks my energy. I come home completely drained. And through my clients, I learned, because I work with a lot of neurodivergent clients, autistic or ADHDers, and through them, I learned this understanding of the sensory system. So the white light, the fluorescent light that's usually at the mall, and usually a lot of malls, they have also white tile. So for me, that combination in all the colors, right, all the different colors of the clothing, just makes me dizzy. So now I know that that's not something that I can handle often, and I would go once in a while, but I have that awareness. So I know to choose, for example, to go to malls that are open, that there is green, that I can go inside and outside, So that brings me more, it's calming for me. At least if I am outside, I can go. If I am inside, I can go outside for a little bit and maybe sit and maybe have a coffee or something, and then, go back inside, and it's not so intense.
How did you find out that it was the colors? Because there are many different things that are happening at a mall, right? It could have been anything else. How were you able to discover what it was exactly?
I just knew. I think when we listen, right, we're often not really paying attention to our body. Our body gives us so many signals, and our mind gives us so many signals. But if we're not used to really, again, that curiosity, like, what is it? I'm here right now. I remember one time I was there not too long ago. And then I just started feeling irritable. I didn't know why. Everything is fine. Nothing changed, except that I was there for like 2 hours. So I just feeling agitated. And then I started to look around me. And I'm looking at the lights. And I'm looking at the floors. And I'm looking like around. I'm like, no, I can't take this anymore. And I left. So... And again, it's because I've learned from the people that tell me, like, this thing bothers me and that thing bothers me. I'm like, oh my God, me too. Or I remember when I used to have birthdays when I was young. After a while, it gets a little bit too much for me. Like, I need to leave here. And I would go and hide under the table. I just need some time. So I think understanding our sensory system, and especially for parents, you mentioned, how I work with parents, and I work with adults as well in therapy, testing, testing for autism, for ADHD, and working with children also doing testing and therapy. So my work with adults really informs my work with parents. So I get to teach parents about all of these things that I am learning, and like looking at an adult and they're sharing with you like all the experiences that they had and how certain parenting strategies helped them or didn't help them, So I get to share that with the parents that I work with, and it keeps me also like gives me a sense of variability in my work where I'm not like doing the same thing over and over, that it gets like a routine and I'm not learning much.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like this gives me a little sense of,
Yeah, that's cool.
Change is nice. Yeah.
That's cool for sure. Change is nice. What is you mentioned like this triangle, right? Like adults to parents and parents to children, right? It all informs the circle.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really interesting and cool. What's the most interesting thing you've learned from being a psychologist throughout this circle?
Yeah. One thing that I learned is, or one thing that I always share, whether with parents or with, adults, is the concept of rolling with resistance. And it's basically a technique from motivational interviewing and counseling. And we can apply it to anything really in our life, right? And the idea is, for example, when I feel resistance to something, it creates this energy that is intense. And it's negative usually, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when there is that energy, it doesn't allow us to just flow. And it just creates conflict and it creates, maybe confrontation, But when you roll with resistance, things just flow, And so I feel like it's the most important thing in life. And I think it has a lot to do with flexibility. Like going back to that concept of emotional reaction or emotional reasoning, like, I'm feeling angry, therefore that person hurt me, or like just immediately reacting to an event. So when we learn this flexibility and we're able to just pause and not take our emotions as facts, right, and sit with them for a little bit and just roll with that.
That emotion, even though it feels yucky,
so strong and and yucky and painful, but yet you don't necessarily have to, the idea is that you wanna fight,
get rid of it,
but you don't. Yes.
So it's not about the emotion itself, it's about the way you're judging the emotion.
Yeah.
That either allows it to flow or be stuck. That was actually the biggest learning for me as well. Yeah. It's something I have to remember every time. And the more I practice doing that, the more I can get unstuck, if you may. Yeah. But it's a very subtle understanding.
Very.
Like what you're explaining is, it took me a long time to get there or even learn how to go inside of me and touch that place that's resistant.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Like an example I can share is, for example, my child comes to me and is like, I don't want to go to tennis. Okay? I paid for tennis. My reaction is like, what are you saying? I paid for tennis. We're going to tennis. But then if my answer is, and this is how we can apply it really to anything. My answer is like, you don't want to go to tennis? Okay. And I move on to something else. And I feed him maybe because he's emotional. He just came from school. He's tired, And maybe I play with him a little bit, right? That's rolling. I'm not like, you're going to tennis. Go put your shoes right now. Put your clothes. We're going. We're late, right? So I'm like, okay, yeah. Maybe I'll hug him. I'll play with him. I'll feed him. Okay, it's time to go to tennis. What do you want to wear? This shirt or this shirt, right?
Mm.
And sure enough, okay, I'll wear this. You know who's going to be there? Your friend. You know, you get to play a little bit after in the playground. I'm also reminding him of all these fun things, right?
Mm.
Okay, I'm going this. We're out of things.
Yeah.
We're not talking again about. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen the following time, you know?
Yeah.
But I know this is not to say I'm forcing him or manipulating him or anything like that. But to say that sometimes people are just emotional, you know?
Yeah.
And they just.
What I hear is you're nurturing it. That it's not. I don't see it as manipulation or anything like that. But there's something
you're
inside.
Accepting.
You accept it and you nurturing. You feeding him. You playing with him.
Yeah.
You're like, you didn't deny that the emotion is there.
Yeah.
You
and
letting
I'm not
it be.
fighting it either, right? And I think the key thing there is not fighting.
Yeah.
I think fighting, that energy of battle, creates this strong negative energy. Like, what am I fighting against exactly, you know?
Mm.
And I think and this is why in counseling, if your client is resistant and you're trying to challenge them in coaching too, you're not going to get anywhere. You get more resistance and more resistance.
Yeah.
But if you just kind of like plant a seed and you roll with it,
Yeah.
you know, then change comes.
Yeah, definitely. It's about planting that seed and softly dealing with it.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned rolling with it and the fighting energy, right? When the nervous system is in that survivor mode, it's either trying to fight or flee, but both of them are fighting energies. One is just aggressive and one is passive, but it's still a combative energy. It's still a resistance, right? You're protective, you're trying. So I just want to mention and make sure we're on the same page, because the fight or flee is still a fight, right? Even when you're fleeing is...
Yeah, you're avoiding, you're not,
Yeah, but you're still in a fight mode kind of thing. Yeah. Do you, like when you were in school, because you have an innate ability to understand all these subtle things, right? I feel like the school kind of like just helped you switch them on more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there are some, sometimes the school of psychology can be very robotic. You know, like this is what we learn, 1 + 1 = 2. Here's the meds, here's the... You're a very amazing psychologist in a sense where you have something very subtle to you that you use to help people, you know, as well. And it's beautiful to witness.
Thank you.
I don't even know what we call that.
I think most people that go in a helping profession, like psychology or coaching, or I think there is something there, right, that leads somebody to want to work with people and really connect and serve. I don't think anybody would choose this. I mean, there are some people that you're like, oh, maybe you can choose psychology. Like, whoa, no, I have nothing to do with that. So I think people gravitate towards these types of professions because there is something special that brings them there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, it was like that. I think I started my career, like I said before, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I decided to start my bachelor's and I chose psychology. And then I had an opportunity to work with autistic children. And, you know, I go to their homes and I really felt that connection.
Mm.
And it was a very rewarding experience. And then it led me to think of like, I want to know more, how do we really understand behaviors from like our cognition, from a testing model? Like how do I know this person, like these certain characteristics are consistent of an autism diagnosis, or they do indicate ADHD or something like that. So then I went further to do my doctorate, but throughout my work, I always felt like I want to see more. Like, I don't want to just work with children, which is what led me to do my what we call practicums, basically, like mini internships in different working with different populations, because like I wanted to work with adults. I wanted to see couples, in therapy. I wanted to do all of that. And then I went, once I graduated and I did my residency, and it was mostly with children. So I still have this love and connection and wanting to work with children. But I also feel like I miss working with adults. I want to work with adults because, again, I feel like I'm always learning. So going back to what you were saying, I think, yes, I think there is something about people that choose this type of profession.
Tell me about children. Where does ADHD come from? I hear a lot of, and I'm not very informed when it comes to this, but what I hear a lot is this is something new that's getting worse and worse every year. New generations have it more than older generations. So educate me, please. What is the story behind ADHD?
So I don't think ADHD is new. I definitely can think in my generation, I can think of older adults who are definitely ADHDers. So I don't think it's new. I think it's gotten more known. And I think through research, I think we know a lot more about it. I think we are at a place where we're understanding it better. We have more, again, research. We have more interventions to help. But basically, it's a different way of how the brain is wired, right? These individuals, they tend to see the world a bit differently. They process information differently. There are maybe, for some of them, there is maybe a hypersensitivity to sound. They move more if it's the hyperactive type. In attention, it's usually there is challenges with attention when it comes to books and things like that, but then they can really hyper focus on things that they really like, which is why some of them are very successful. So it's not new at all. I think there are certain things in the environment that may maybe make the symptoms, I think, more obvious or worsen the symptoms. I think, for example, if there is a child with ADHD and we load them with more sugar and, food dyes and sit them in front of the screen for hours, I think that, or you can get even a child who does not have ADHD and you put all of these, combination of things, and they are going to look hyperactive and inattentive.
So is it something that you're born with, or is it something?
It's genetic, yes.
It's genetics,
yes.
Okay. I was wondering if it's like, is it a nature versus nurture kind of thing?
It's genetic. I think there is a predisposition, but then how does the environment, contribute also matters.
I have a couple of friends who say how they were given pills as kids because they had ADHD and it totally mess them up. What is your take on that? Is there a different way to deal with kids who have ADHD versus those them on pills?
I think just like everything else, understanding is number one. Education is number one for parents, right? I think how the environment really treats these children, how the teachers, the schools, the home, the parents treats these children matter. And I think in terms of medication, it really depends. I think it's a very personal choice, I think, that parents make. And sometimes they are pressured to do that by the schools. Sometimes they have to do that so the child can succeed academically. Otherwise, they won't. And I think it's something that I'm not against medication. I think sometimes it is needed. But the medication need a lot of monitoring. And I think sometimes, because of lack of education or parents, they don't know that they have to really monitor the symptoms. Are the medication impacting the child's sleep? Is it impacting their eating? Like, what's going on exactly? Is it making them even more dysregulated, for example, at the end of the day? Is it making them sluggish? So there is a lot of education that should be provided to parents when the children are prescribed medication, and you can't give the same dose for 5 years, or because I've seen some cases like that. But medication can be helpful in addition to, the same as any other mental health condition or any other challenge that we have. Medication by itself, it's going to help. But then there are other things that the person needs to do, the environment, again, modifications. So, for example, ADHD, helping the child learn how to self-regulate, helping them learn techniques for impulsivity, how to stop, how to pause, things like that. So we can't just depend on medication.
Mm-hmm. There's a combination of things, right? Every individual is unique, and
just like with anxiety, right? Like some people, they think, okay, I took this medication, but I'm still anxious because you didn't work on your thought patterns. Because the chatter you have and what you're telling yourself is the same. So unless you learn how to really change that conversation and you work on yourself, and you work on some of the belief systems that you have, that you're operating from, right? Like, your anxiety is not going to be gone 100%.
Deciding or choosing to actually take a deep look at yourself and your beliefs and your thoughts really is the first step to any of this. And it's a choice that we always given. I feel like we're always given that choice. Sometimes it's an awareness, you know.
I was just going to say that,
And sometimes it's through an anxiety or something that happens to us. It's like God or the universe smacks us in the face, like boom.
Work on yourself.
Yeah. It's time. Yeah. But we always get that opportunity.
It's life. It's called life.
Yeah, it's the purpose of life.
Yes.
Right. I feel like
you can't be just like the same and everything is like, no, you're gonna have some little bumps in the road.
Yeah.
Where you're like,
And it gets, if you keep on functioning with the same beliefs you've had as a child and as a teenager, life gets more painful and more painful and more painful. You have to upgrade, right? It's like having an iPhone 15 with an iOS 3, right? The iPhone is just going to struggle to function. It's the same for us. We have to upgrade. And, when you're in it, it it feels yucky. And I think, to your point earlier, the more you learn to flow with that resistance, the more you're able to upgrade faster and faster and faster.
And how do we respond to those bumps, right? Or like those kicks, that you mentioned? How do we respond to them makes all the difference.
Yeah.
And of course it's, for some of us, it's going to take us some time, and that's okay, But then ideally, that we're going to learn something from that situation, from that event, from that trauma, from that sickness, right? We're going to learn something about ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's it's important to use these situations as an opportunity to learn a little bit more about ourselves.
Yeah, that's a very powerful mindset, to see it as an opportunity and not a problem. You know, see it as a situation, not even a problem.
Yeah, and maybe it's okay that we don't do that right away. Here, we're not setting the expectation that, you know, you get into a car accident, you come out of your
This is a great opportunity.
You come out of your car bleeding and you're like, what an opportunity to learn something. Like, that's not the expectation. But the expectation, you know, once you're good, you're like, okay, what was it in this situation that I can really, you know.
It's that regulation first, right? It's like you're saying, if you're in a car accident, you're bleeding, there's the shock.
Yeah, there's all the feelings. There is, you know, you're scared, you're problem solving, you know.
Yeah.
So the expectation is not to do that then, but hopefully there is that awareness and reflection, and that, you know.
And it's never a one solution to all.
Yeah.
Right? There's like different scenarios and different things that you might learn to do, or you gotta adapt, right?
Yes.
Being able to adapt is one of the biggest qualities that we can have, and doing it with grace and softness.
Which is not always the case, which is okay.
It's all okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I have clients who are resistant, or in the process, I have to tell myself the reason why I keep saying it's okay. It's like, it's okay. Like, I have to meet them where they are, you know, like, it's okay. So that's why I keep reminding myself that it's okay, you know, it's okay to be in those feelings, you know, and I think progress comes a little by little.
So what I've learned, the approach of it's okay, right? It's gotta be okay, right? Because if not, you're there's some sort of resistance to it anyway.
Exactly.
And there is a time where you're also going to be like, it's okay, and okay, it's time to, you know, let's do something about it,
right.
And it's okay, and
it's okay where you are,
and we got to do something. It doesn't mean you're just gonna chill there.
Not either or,
right. Yeah. It's an and.
Yes.
The and thing changed my life. You know, like I was saying earlier, the black or white, or just having to choose a side. It always created that resistance or certain expectation. But having two or more things exist at the same time, it's colorful world.
That's psychological flexibility.
Right.
Right?
Mm.
It's not either or. And that comes with maturity and growth, and, you know, it's not easy to get there, and we're not always there.
Talking about psychological, what do you call it? Flexibility or maturity?
Or mental flexibility.
Mental flexibility, yeah. You know, talking about extremes, you always see like you can be super rigid, or you could be too flexible, and you can create that balance. But I wanted to ask you, because you're definitely very mature, and you've been through stuff in life as well. You have that innate capability to understand a lot of things and see a lot of subtle things, but you also developed a lot of maturity through a lot of your experiences. I know a few years ago you've experienced a disease. You went through cancer. I think we met like
afterwards, where we both were sharing our bump.
Right? Because I had my vocal cord issues, where, you know, I didn't speak for about a year, and you had your.
Yes. We're like, okay, let's sit here and let's share.
Let's share. No, I was in LA at the time, and you were still here in Miami. I don't even know if like the next question should be like, what did you learn from that? You know?
Yeah.
I want you to share whatever you want to share from that journey.
So to connect it to what we were talking about, I think it's one of the experiences that also taught me to just surrender. It does come innate to me to not be reactive, especially with big things. Like, I'm the type of person who's not going to be screaming and like, I think it happens. If I tell you the reasons that I scream, you will laugh. But overall, if there is like a big thing, I'm like this calm, collected person who deals with the situation, problem solving. So that's who I am. And in this situation, it was exactly the same. I was calm. I was like, okay, problem solving. Let's go to doctors. Let's get different opinions. What needs to get done? How am I going to manage? I was at the time doing my residency. Like, that's so important to me. How can I balance both while going through treatment? And I think what helped me through that experience is faith.
So wait, so you didn't freak out. So you got the news.
Yeah.
You didn't go into freak out mode. No. You didn't go like, I might die.
No, I finished my work. I was working.
For real?
Yes.
You didn't freak out at all?
I didn't freak out.
You didn't even think about like, you might die?
No, dying did not cross my mind. I was thinking, how am I going to finish my residency?
I don't know if I'm going to call that denial.
No, it was problem
or strength.
It was problem solving. I think it was like, I have this situation. I need to learn about it more. I can't make an assumption from a call. I was at work. They called me. They're like, hey, by the way, your results came out. You have cancer. It's this and that. Like, okay. I was sitting with my supervisor and with another colleague, and we're like, okay, that's what they just told me. So I finished my work, and I left, and I told my sisters, and I called my family, etc.
Did they freak out?
No.
Nobody freaked
Maybe
out.
It's something in my family that we're like, you're not supposed to freak out when there is a problem. First problem solved, then freak out. And not to say that I didn't have, of course, times when I felt sad or I felt my feelings, and I think my family wanted me to cry, and I'm like, it's not the time. Like, let me first learn what's going on. I don't know what's going on. Like, it's shocking, and I don't know. So I did that, but I think the part for me is that faith. I don't know. And it's not something you can learn. It's something that maybe it comes with experience, and I've always had faith. And maybe it comes from our Islamic teaching, you know. I don't know. The verse that always stuck with me is Inna ba'da al-usri yusra, you know. And verily, with hardship comes ease. So in my mind, there is always ease coming, you know? So it's hope. It's like, okay, I got to deal with things, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. And maybe that's what kept me calm in dealing with it. Again, not to say that I did not have moments when I was scared or confused, or maybe disappointed that my plans in life were going to be in pause, although I tried my best not to let them. It taught me that I need to be more mindful of what my body needs, of my nervous system, of the amount of stress I need to take on. So it was a very good learning experience. It taught me a lot about me, about my emotional expression, how much I express, how much I don't. So it was a good learning experience. But going back to that, resistance and surrendering, I surrendered. There was no fight. And I never understood, and I respect where everybody comes from, and I never understood that concept of fighting cancer. I'm not fighting nobody. I don't like to fight. I'm working with cancer. I'm finding solutions to the cancer. I'm not fighting nothing.
That's a whole different mindset. How did you come to this mindset? How did you even think to yourself, I don't need to fight it, I need to work with it?
I don't know. I really don't know. I think, again, maybe it's faith. Maybe because in the back of my mind, I relied a lot on my faith. I relied a lot on the belief that this is going to work out.
When you mentioned I learned a lot about my emotions, what did you learn?
I learned that it's important to express my emotions. Because again, I think, and I talk about myself, we come from a culture, or I come from a culture that expressing emotions was not something that was accepted, validated, right? Like, don't cry, and it's not just our culture. I mean, many cultures are like that, know? So there was a lot of repression of emotions, and I'm a sensitive person, so maybe some people would disagree with me, but like my closest people, I am sensitive to people's feelings, and I
Why would you say some people wouldn't agree with me? I think you're
I think sometimes I'm very direct. That's what, going back to what, like, sometimes when I think I'm not direct,
Yeah, I think you're very sensitive.
Yeah, I'm very sensitive to people's feelings, and I absorb also people's energy. I'm sensitive to people's energy. So for me, sometimes expressing my feelings, again, because maybe that balance of being assertive or, being harsh, right? I didn't know how to do that.
Find that balance.
Maybe I repressed a lot of my feelings and emotions. There's also something that just came to my mind right now. I think early on, I learned that expressing feelings or being vulnerable is weakness. So I have to be tough. I have to be strong. Crying is not, And only a few years ago, I worked on this, that it's okay to cry. It's okay to be vulnerable. And sure enough, while I was going through that journey, I was in a meeting where probably it's perceived not that it's not okay to cry. Then I started crying in the middle of the meeting. But I didn't judge myself. I was like, yay, it's working. It's the wrong time, the wrong place, but it's working. So
it's almost like the gates get open, and then all of a sudden, you can't control anymore.
Myself, and that was for me success. At the wrong time, the wrong people. But it was good.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Like, going from being strong and keep going no matter what into pausing and allowing feelings to emerge and expressing them. And for me, it's why I had the issue in my throat, because that's the connection between what's happening in the body and the head and the brain. I
learned that too.
Right.
Yes.
And so it was completely blocked here.
Yeah.
And for me too, like, once I went through that journey and I opened this, then I would cry over anything, places that you're like, well, maybe not here, but I'm not gonna, because like we were talking, you go to extremes, right? So going from, I'm just gonna be strong, keep it to myself, into like, now whoever's ready for it, whoever's ready or not for it, he's gonna receive it. Right. And then you learn to balance it out.
Yes, yeah. And I know that your book that you're working on, right?
Yeah.
Is it Finding Your Voice or something?
I've been working on that book for a long time.
Yeah. And it's that, right?
Yeah.
It's being able to find your voice.
It is. Which has a lot of meaning. Because losing my voice it's losing who I am. Right? Yeah. But for me, it wasn't just like I can't speak. It was more of I
express myself.
Right. I haven't expressed myself in years. Maybe since I was a child. I have not expressed myself fully or allowed myself to. Express me. It's a story I created in my head, right? Like,
we always do, right?
Yeah, I don't think anybody was like, you cannot cry.
Anything.
Don't say that. It wasn't like that. But it's what I created in my head, and how we were talking about upgrading the system, right? And then here I am. I'm 30, and I'm still living with a system of a 6 or 7 year old.
Yeah.
And then I hit a wall. Like, you know, our computer shuts down, must restart and you go dark. For me, that's how it was. You know how you upgrade your phone and it goes dark while it's upgrading? For me, that's what was happening to me. I went dark for that year while I was doing all that work. And I couldn't speak, right? So I had to really go in and listen to my chatter. Because I can't be social. I can't speak to anybody. The only person I can dialogue with right now is me. And at first I didn't like it. I didn't like that dialogue. I didn't like hearing what I was hearing.
So I know your journey, right?
Yeah.
What helped you deal with your situation the way you did? Because I think it was incredible how you took that, speaking of learning from the bump. How did you do that?
How did I decide and go and learn from it?
Yeah.
The way I see it is I didn't have a choice. The way things were going for me, they were going very fast. I think I was 32 at the time. I was living in LA. I was living a great life. By the way. Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
I was living an amazing life, great job. Yeah. Living in Hollywood. Fun. Everything. I was working a lot. I loved what I did. I was successful. Everything was great. And then I was going 200 miles an hour and then I hit a wall. So imagine you're going 200 miles and you crash. You completely crash. So when that happened, I lost everything that defined me in terms of society. So job, social status, wealth, and all those things. When I lost all those things, I was in meditation one day. And for me, it was God speaking to me like, you need to get out. Because I got really depressed.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Monks don't speak, right? So let me go hang out with those who don't speak either because it's really loud out here. I realized how loud people were and I couldn't answer back and I couldn't say anything. So I had to get out. And so I left. And that's where I learned about meditation and sitting with myself and listening to the chatter. Yeah. And it wasn't pleasant.
Was it loud?
It was loud, and I was like, how am I saying all these things to myself? Yeah. And a lot of things came up to the surface. Things I had completely suppressed and forgotten about that had happened to me at a younger age. So like I said, it went dark for a period there until I was able, my mechanism processed all these things. I cried it out. I let it out. And
all the expression you needed.
Yeah, exactly. Until my voice came back when I was in Cambodia. And then I felt so free and light and happy. So from there, from doing that work and going deep, from there I decided there's no going back after that, right? There's no going back.
You can't erase that experience.
Yeah, and you can no longer deny that there's something more than the physical. Yeah. You can no longer deny that. And I became so in touch with my voice and who I am that I wanted to keep working on that. So, and I did. And it did teach me a lot of things. For me, when I look back, it wasn't like we were saying earlier. I was like, oh my God, this is a great opportunity.
Wonderful.
Let me learn from it. Now looking back, I'm like, I'm very grateful. Yeah. It did teach me a lot of faith, because I got to admit that unlike you, I did not have a lot of faith then. I was more mechanical. I was more in the business world and I was more about working, producing, making money and climbing the ladder of the corporate world. But faith then became a big part of my life.
It brings such peace.
Faith, definitely. Yeah, for sure. So I want to ask you now about What are some of the misconceptions that people have around therapy?
That's a good question. I think people think that if they just take few therapy sessions, then they should, right? Symptoms should reduce. They should feel better. There is this quick fix mindset that, and there is a lot of self-judgment, like, why am I not getting better? Like, I've done everything. I took the pills. I did the therapy, and I'm still feeling depressed, or I'm still feeling anxious. And therapy takes time. Learning about yourself takes time. Changing your mindset takes time. Going deeper in your belief system and, changing them takes time. So it's not something that happens right away after a few sessions. The other thing also is, I think some people believe that if there is an end to the journey, right? And there is no end. I mean, the end is the end, right?
Right.
As long as we're still here.
You're not coming back from that.
Exactly. As long as we're still here, there is no end, and progress is not linear. There will be some ups, there will be some downs, there will be some setbacks. Maybe there is some times where it's going to be like just stagnation. There is no movement, there is no change. And what I find that sometimes when people make progress and then there is either high stress or there is a new transition, it could be even positive transition, right? It could be getting married, having a baby, moving to a new country or anything like that, getting a new job. And they are experiencing high level of stress, and then maybe the symptoms show up again, then they feel like they failed. Or all their hard work now just gone. And it's not true. I think we live very stressful lives, and we are going to have ups and downs, and our symptoms are not going to go away forever. Like, I think using that curiosity mindset and learning about ourselves and not judging and not being so critical when some feelings arise, or some where we don't respond to situations the way we have learned to respond to them, right? When we have those setbacks, I think it's very important.
I'm hearing a lot around acceptance.
Yeah.
Accepting that this is the way life works. It's not against you. Nobody is doing anything specifically against you to hurt you. Definitely not God or the universe, whatever you call it. It's just how life works. The more we can accept and make peace with that, the more we can navigate.
The easier our lives will be.
Yeah. It's not realistic to think that it's always going to be easy or good.
Yeah.
But the acceptance that, okay, well, this is happening. It's part of life. It's not against me. It's just how it is. It's not personal.
It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we, a lot of times, take things personal.
Yeah, we do. It's the more you take things personal, the more you suffer.
For sure.
I had to learn that. That's ego, right? Like the ego wants to take things personal, and it's when we take things personal, we're in that level 2 nervous system, or fight or flee. It's they're doing it against me, so now I have to fight, or I'm under attack, right? So I'm freaking out, and now I have to fight or I have to run, whichever it is, but I got to do something about that.
Yeah. And the opposite is true. It's so peaceful when you get to a place where we're not so reactive, when we're, and I'm talking like reactive to ourselves, right? When we get to a place where you make a mistake and you're like, I made a mistake, when we're able to have compassion for ourselves, because I think we're much more compassionate with others than we are with ourselves.
And, even a layer on top of it is, even when you're not compassionate with yourself, be compassionate with the part that's not compassionate with yourself. Right? Even then, don't be like, oh my God, look, I was harsh on myself again. What's wrong with me?
That's so true.
Why am I doing this again?
Yes, that's so true.
It's like another layer on top of it. It's judgment of the judgment of the judgment.
Yeah.
And it just keeps going and going.
That's so true.
You're so right when you can laugh about it. I'm like, well, yeah, look, I did it again. That can be very helpful with accountability, obviously, right? With the end, I'm accountable.
Yeah. And what I have learned from my experience and from my clients is we are much more likely to take accountability and take action when there is compassion. I think it's so much easier to redirect ourselves to actually take action. Like, let's say there is a project that is due. And if I go on like, oh my God, you're procrastinating. How could you? You're not taking your job seriously, blah, 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 right? Very harsh. It's going to take me a long time to actually, because I'm just going to be busy with that conversation, right? With that fight. And I'm going to feel probably down and I'm not really going to take the action to actually, but it's the opposite when I'm going like, what's going on for you? Curiosity, Why are you procrastinating on this project? Why aren't you working on it? Maybe I'm tired physically, like I really just need some time. Maybe whatever it is. And then I'm like, okay, it's time now to get going. It's so much softer and kinder. And I see that in my clients too, when they change that conversation to, why I'm doing this? And they also learn about themselves. So the following time when they have something so important, they catch themselves doing that. Yeah. And they're able to redirect and take action.
It's the practice, right?
Yeah, it's the practice.
Once you uncover something new, you gotta practice it so that it sticks, right? So this new way of being becomes the new you. Yeah. What's next for Dr. Sanaa?
I'm always trying to improve, grow, learn, balance, work on my personal life. I think that's very, very important thing for me. Helping my clients, expanding my practice, offering more services to, more people. That's what it is.
And where can people find you?
So they can find me on my website at potentialitysolutions.com and also on Instagram at Potentiality Solutions. I do both in-person and telehealth, and my practice is located in Coral Gables, Miami, Florida.
And you work with children, with adults, and with parents.
Correct. I do testing, therapy, and parent coaching.
Amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here. Really amazing conversation. Yes. I know, me too.
Yeah, I love it.
All right.
Thank you.
Next time on the Sarra Show. Who will be here? I do not know yet. We'll find out soon. If you have a guest who you would like me to interview that lives in Miami, please let me know and I'll reach out to them. Or if you're in contact with them, then put me in contact. I would love to have them here. Love you guys. Bye.